AMD just confirmed that Xbox is getting FSR 3, which stands for Fidelity FX Super Resolution. And this technology, ladies and gentlemen, should double performance in many games on Xbox Series consoles. Let's look into this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So let's talk about that new AMD's technology. So this new technology called FSR 3, Fidelity FX Super Resolution version 3, is coming to Xbox, PC and probably PlayStation 5 too. And I know that AMD said nothing about PlayStation version, but I'm sure it will be there. I'm sure that AMD will deliver that technology for PlayStation 2, just like they did with FSR 1 and 2, right? It's just a matter of time, in my opinion. Anyway, with that out of the way, what is this new technology all about? Well, it's all about generating extra frames. Well, kind of fake frames, really, but and it sounds cool on paper, I guess, because it makes a 30 frames per second game, 60 frames per second game, and AMD even claims, at least on PC, that some games may actually get 3 times the frames, right? So if a game is running at 40 frames per second, it may get a boost to up to 120, right? But I guess it will depend on the game, on the implementation. There's different things going on there, which I will talk about it in a minute. And the I guess cool thing about this particular technology, just like with FSR 1 and 2, is the fact it doesn't require machine learning, right, capabilities. And another thing, it's open source, right? So everyone can use it, everyone has access to the code. And also AMD did confirm that FSR 3 will be available on, not only for AMD cards on PC, for example, and of course on consoles, but also, it will be available for other manufacturers too. So Intel, Nvidia, you name it, right? But there's actually one big benefit for AMD users on PC, and I'll talk about it in a minute. Okay, so this technology, why did I say that it sounds great on paper? Well, because like I said, it offers better frames, so that's great. But, we know this by testing DLSS 3, because it's a similar technology in a sense that it produces the same results, but, it does it a little bit in a different way, I guess. But even with machine learning in play, which, sometimes helps with a lot of stuff, DLSS 3 introduces, some graphics are artifacting, and I think that they are, ironing things out right now, smoothing things out on Nvidia side of things. But also DLSS 3, unfortunately, introduces input lag, right? So there's a little bit of latency there. And so, when you watch somebody playing a game, you won't really notice it. But when you control and you see that there's an input lag between you move, between your analog stick or mouse movement, I guess that will be actually worse on PC, because mouse movements are very sensitive and you can feel any sort of input lag. Where on consoles with analogs, it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest with you, right? So I guess this technology should work pretty well for consoles, but it does work on PC too. And obviously NVIDIA has their I don't know how they call it. They've got this minimum latency kind of technology, and I know I think they call it reflex or something. AMD has its own technology like that too. So I think, and obviously they do say that there are some challenges that AMD has to face and developers has to face implementing this new technology, but there's other technologies that should help to feel better, for games to feel better still, right? Even though obviously this is not going to be the same as native experience, but you know what, like in like some big open world games where there's like games really GPUs being hit hard when it comes to performance, and you don't necessarily are playing a fast-paced shooter, I don't think you should really care, right? I mean, as long as there's not much artifacting and that kind of stuff, that should be fine. Now, another cool thing is that they already named a couple of games that will be getting that technology pretty soon. I've heard something about September. So Starfield is on the list, so that's fantastic news. But I don't think it's going to be there, at launch, but just shortly after launch. Also, Cyberpunk 2077 is getting that, and Immortals of Avium, and there's one more game that they spoke about. Oh, Forspoken is getting that technology too, right? And they were actually showing Forspoken running on AMD card, where that technology actually almost tripled the performance. They went from like 40 or 35 frames per second to over 120, right? Something like that. So some crazy numbers. So it all sounds great, but like I said, I'm just worried about the input lag a little bit, about the latency. Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's because I did say that it will work on many GPUs, but not all of them. Because AMD did say that in order for this technology to work, GPU has to come with some form of asynchronous compute, which is not really a big deal, because this technology has been available on graphics cards for half of decade, really, right? Like 5-6 years, I think. I think even PlayStation 4 had, and even Xbox Xbox One had some asynchronous compute built into the consoles too. So we're talking about like a decade old hardware. So really that shouldn't be a problem. But talking about performance, and that's why some games will benefit from this technology more, where other games less, because it all depends how much of these, or how many of these asynchronous compute units a game is using for its own game logic. And depending on how many of these asynchronous compute resources are being left, well, the more the better. So the less a game is heavy on the asynchronous compute, the better result you will see with FSR 3, right? So that it's I'm really curious on how that's really going to work. So I guess all that computational power will actually come in handy with this technology, that's for sure. So I guess I don't really want to say that that Xbox will run this technology better, but Xbox sure has more more compute, if you know what I mean, right? So we'll see how that goes. But at the end of the day, it all depends on the engine and the implementation and what have you. And also, at the end of the day, any CPU bottleneck can hinder any sort of like frame generation still, in my opinion, a little bit, I guess. So that's one thing. And the last thing I really wanted to say is that this particular technology, and this is what Digital Foundry said, quoting one of the AMD's engineers, is that the best results with FSR 3 developers are getting with games over 60 frames per second, which worries me a little bit in my because I don't think it's a case of this technology not being able to generate these frames, but I think it's all about input lag and latency, right? Input lag really, and I think that that's what they actually worried about. And I think that when it comes to 30 frames per second games, and then being upscaled to 60 or whatever, you will actually still, the game will have 60 frames per second, will offer 60 frames per second, but it may still feel like 30 frames per second to control, if you know what I mean. So that's my only fear, really. So I guess for slower paced kind of games, that should work just fine. But like I said, for a fast paced shooters, that's probably not going to be the best scenario. But hey, DLSS 3 works pretty well in Cyberpunk and a couple of other games, and it works. So, you know, I'm curious to see how FSR 3 will look like and run like on PC and consoles too. So guys, that's the news, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.